Welcome to Girls Gone Wellness, Michelle.
Oh my gosh, Vic and Jeanette. I can't wait to be here. I'm so excited. Us East Coast girlies.
Yes. Okay, so we are so excited. When we first asked you to be on, I've always loved your Instagram and I've always loved your approach to weight management because that's the field I'm in. And I love that you have like an anti-diet lens there. And so my plan was to have you on to talk about that. That was the whole goal for this episode. And then Jeanette made a good point, and she was like, Michelle Shapiro is an expert in MCAS, histamine issues, long COVID, all the things that we like just have not talked about. And I think we've like shied away from a little bit because we
Sure.
are very much not experts in that. And so it was important for us to have you on to talk about it just because we really value your expertise in this area. So let's get started. Why don't we dive into who you are? Give us a little
Yes.
introduction and let us know how this passion for this area of health kind of came to be.
Yeah, I'll briefly kind of run you through my personal health story because
Yeah.
weight is a piece of it. And these things, these syndromes or conditions that I call, cluster them into living in like a highly sensitive body is what I would call them, came as like the second leg of my health journey. So the reason why you may have associated, if you think of like my name, you'll think of weight loss and kind of this bridge between the body positive world and the weight loss world, which usually it feels like there's dietitians who live in different camps,
Yep.
is because of my own personal weight loss story. So I grew up in Queens, New York City, one of the most diverse high schools in the entire world, arguably the most diverse. But there's not like a ranking for that. But the area is the most diverse area in the entire world, which is really cool.
Hmm.
And it was diverse of race, body, gender, like any type of person that exists, we had and we were together, and it was a really beautiful experience. And then going into college, I was going to school at the University of Delaware, and I realized that even though I was class clown of my high school, and my high school had 5,000 students, which is a huge accomplishment for me, and I had this amazing life, and I had always occupied a larger body, and I realized it didn't really get in the way of much when I was growing up, and I didn't feel sick. I felt okay. But going to college, I realized people aren't just going to know you. Like, you're not Michelle Shapiro to these people, you're a stranger. And I was going to the University of Delaware, which is a much more homogenous school and experience.
Hmm.
So I was like, I kind of think I have to lose weight before going away to school. So I went on a really rapid weight loss journey, and I lost like close to 100 pounds that year. I really think it was like more in a 3 to 6 month time frame. It was extremely rapid, and it was from severe calorie restriction and a vegan diet. I went away to school, and during my whole time at school, I was sick. I had severe panic attacks, acid reflux, severe gut issues, and my anxiety and panic was so rampant. I got diagnosed with hypothyroidism, IBS, and I kind of collected all these new diagnoses while I was in school to be a dietitian. And I just didn't feel better when I lost weight. I thought losing weight was going to make me feel so much better. But I felt worse actually when I lost weight. And then I developed a very disrupted relationship with food. So fast forward to after college, I went on this kind of like kick anxiety butt program that I developed myself. And I eliminated my panic attacks. And I got about 80% of the way. And then I actually went to a naturopathic physician by the name of Dr. Robert Kochko, who we had a 2 hour first session.
Yep.
And what he didn't tell me at the time was actually I was one of his first patients too, which is really
Wow.
cute. And after the appointment, I was like, it's so weird you think you're my doctor because we're best friends and business partners. Like I was like, I really like naturopathic medicine was the thing that saved me in my health because I had this amazing dietetics degree and there's a great program I went to, but it was not a functional, medicine, naturopathic medicine degree. So I had no pathway to recover from what I think was, severe side effects from rapid weight loss, both on a physiological level
Mhm.
from the toxin overload and then also on a spiritual level as well. So I worked for many years on helping clients to repair their relationship with food while losing weight. And I felt really good for many years. Kept the weight loss off, never regained the weight to this day, never regained the weight after 15 years or whatever it is. And then I had encountered COVID, and I then had a mold exposure. And then I started seeking the help of naturopathic physicians and functional medicine doctors again. This time, every time I went to an appointment, I felt worse. Every single time I would end up with like ER level severe symptoms like rapid heart rate, fevers, rashes, sometimes rashes, not so often for me. Um, tremors that would last all night, debilitating anxiety that I can only describe as being very physical. It wasn't like mental anxiety, it was physical, feeling like my whole body is vibrating. And the more that I went through parasite protocols, mold detoxes, got those IVs, all these amazing treatments, the sicker I got. And I realized, oh my goodness, like my colleagues are the most incredible functional medicine doctors in the country, the most incredible naturopathic physicians. And Dr. Kochko, by the way, who I'll send this podcast to, he did end up becoming my best friend and business partner, by the way. I did force him into it, and to this day, we still are best friends and business partners. But there was no answers for me when I had encountered these new symptoms, like the old school stuff, the leaky gut, SIBO, weight loss, liver detox. It was all there. But this new wave of symptoms that my clients were experiencing and that I was experiencing was like there was no answers for us. So I went on my own. Sorry.
New York.
Yeah, exactly. Loud. Exactly. So I went on my own journey of understanding these conditions that I didn't even know I had. I just thought I was like, COVID messed me up. What the heck is this? The world didn't really understand, to where I then finally understood I was dealing with histamine issues, POTS, and postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, and hypermobility Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which we'll talk about all of them. But it was my road back from this injury I had, these medical induced injuries I had as well, and being able to walk again, sleep again, and do all these basics of my life, that I learned these answers that I now excitedly share with people. But Vic, you're right, because for the first half of my career, I definitely was the lady who did the body positivity plus weight loss thing.
Yeah.
Like, how do you bridge those two? And now, my health story indicated the next leg of my journey. That was long.
Wow. No, that's an amazing story. Thank you for sharing that. And I think it's such an important thing when people have personal stories, because they can help their clients and their patients so much more, right? Because I think, like, especially in integrative medicine, and I think we'll talk about this later, but when we talk about like MCAS and POTS and all of these things, like, me and Vic were even saying before we started to record, like, we try to shy away from them because they're like scary and there's a lot of like different ways that it can show up. But you even said like you were going to the ER, and like there's all of these things, and it's very serious and can get very serious. So we need to talk about these things. So we're so excited to have you on to talk about them. For those who aren't familiar, what is MCAS? Why do we think that we're hearing about it more now? Do you think we're hearing about it more now? Do you think we're talking about it more now? Is it because of COVID that it's more common that we're talking about it? Would love for you to just, give a definition for that maybe.
I'm going to jump into that, and we will go through that. And I just wanted to respond to one thing you said that's really important, which is that practitioners do not learn adequately about MCAS you guys just graduating. Woohoo. It's incredible. This is modern information. You would actually be at the forefront of knowing modern information in your schooling, right? Because you're going to talk about things that are prevalent. So it's not your fault that you didn't learn about it. And also, we can all learn. And I appreciate you taking the jump, because it would have been an easier conversation if we did the weight loss body positivity conversation, by the way. It would have been, but I appreciate that, because people really need this conversation. And I don't want any of us to be too intimidated by it, because once we learn how the system runs, it's not impossible to work with and treat. Though I will tell you, a lot of the practitioners I know who work with MCAS no longer do, because you need a very specific skill set. It's very specific, and you need a lot of really intense resilience for you and your clients. And thank God, I'm like unkillable. I'm like a cockroach. So it really helps, but it's true. I always say my mother and I could like survive a nuclear war. It's true. But it takes a very specific type. So MCAS, mast cell activation syndrome. Let's walk it all the way back to what are mast cells in the first place. Mast cells are a type of white blood cell. They're part of our immune system. And their goal really kind of, if I had a visual for them, it's almost like if they're the guards on the watchtower of the body. So they're looking over, let's say they're on, literally picture like a watchtower. And they're kind of standing at the top. They're watching a battle happen. They're deploying resources to the battle. And then their job also is, after the battle ends, so picture there's a battlefield with debris and we're looking over it and dead bodies and all the scary stuff. Mast cells are also then responsible for making sure that doesn't happen again. So they want to prevent future threats from happening, and they interact with the brain, every single organ, every single system in our body to make sure that doesn't happen again. So mast cells are these cells, that white blood cells, that have receptors on the outside of them. And then on the inside, they have these little sacs of granules. And we say that basically something will attach to the outside of them and they'll do something called degranulate. So something attaches to the outside, and then we release a bunch of chemical messengers from the inside. There are over 1,200 messengers that mast cells release. And though the intention of mast cells, again, is to, well, let me get blood flow to this area, let me send immune cells here, nutrients here, to help with repair or defense or anything that the immune system or nervous system would need to help with. The issue is that if those mast cells are constantly turned on, they're constantly releasing those chemical messengers. And when there's too many of those in our blood, we get symptoms. So one of those that we hear about all the time is histamine. That's one of the 1,200 chemical messengers. So it's one we hear the most about because I think histamines tend to create a lot of drama and a lot of the symptoms that we see. So we will talk about histamines, I'm sure, specifically, but one of the main features of histamines is they cause our blood vessels to vasodilate, opening up our blood vessels, and then that can create a lot of like blood flow issues. And I'll give visuals for that when we talk more about histamines. But the presence of those chemicals, those chemical messengers just building up in our body, too many being released too constantly and us not being able to clear them out, creates new symptoms because we're not supposed to live in that heightened immune state all the time. Same with the process of like inflammation in the body, right? Like we need the immune response, but it's when we have too many of those floating around. In reference to the question, well, why is this happening more now? One of the most interesting and important pieces of this conversation is going to be the relationship between COVID and mast cells. So COVID specifically attaches to mast cells. So there's a receptor on the outside of mast cells called the ACE2 receptor. COVID attaches to and attacks the outside of the mast cell to constantly create that activation. That's why if you get a flu, right? We've never heard of anything like long flu before. We've heard of mono and these other viruses that can cause longer symptoms, but this was very particular because in long COVID, and there did one state-by-state survey and showed that in some states, up to 30% of people who had COVID in those states had long COVID. We are talking about millions, and this is in North America. We're talking about millions, if not hundreds of millions of people who are encountering symptoms that they've never experienced before. And that's really because what happens in this relationship between COVID and mast cells, essentially, it puts your body into a particular state of constant alarm. And then we freak out because those symptoms are so scary. And we will talk about what those symptoms are. And it creates the response again. So it becomes a nervous system issue when it once was an immune system issue.
Wow, that's so fascinating. Me and Vic are actually studying for our first board exam, and it's all on like immunology and all those things. So I feel like I just got a good immunology lesson there.
A refresh.
Yes.
It's really, you're a very good explainer for that type of stuff. It's complicated, and I think it can get intimidating too, which is why people shy away from it. But you definitely explained that really well. What about POTS? Because this is also something we want to touch on as well. It's different, but it's kind of lumped in these, like you said, highly sensitive body type disorders. So I'd love for you to talk about POTS too.
Yeah, we have we call it the triad, which is MCAS, POTS, and hypermobility. And they are related to each other in many ways we can talk about. But one of the key ways that POTS and MCAS are related, and we will talk about what POTS is through this blood flow vasodilation piece. So POTS is postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. What that literally means is when you make a positional change, your heart rate starts racing fast. Okay. So this is a crazy thing about POTS. POTS is a form of dysautonomia. If you had a racing heart, what kind of doctor would you go to? A cardiologist, right? Any of us would go to a cardiologist. Our heart's pounding out of our chests.
Yeah.
But POTS is a form of dysautonomia, which means it's a form of dysfunction of the autonomic nervous system. So it's not that our heart is pumping fast because we have a problem with our heart. It's that our heart is pumping fast because our brain is not sending the right signal to our heart of when to pump, where to send blood, and how to get blood back up to the heart and brain. So what POTS can look or feel like is this example I can give of if someone goes into a really hot shower, and this is my example of where MCAS and POTS meet. So I'm going to talk about MCAS in the situation too. So histamines, like I said, are vasodilators. And what vasodilation means is that your blood vessels open up kind of to create like a slide, right? So if your blood vessels are open, gravity can help us too. Then if we need to send immune cells or nutrients to an area or blood flow or oxygen, it'll go really fast because it's open. If something's closed, it's slower and harder to move things through, right? Open blood vessels. So some people have had this experience before where they're in the shower. Heat is actually a vasodilator as well. We're standing in the shower, and so many people, I'm thinking even listening, have experienced this. They feel really dizzy randomly in the shower. They look down and their legs are red, and then their heart starts pounding, and they're like, what the heck is going on? So what's happening in the situation is our blood vessels are wide open because of that vasodilation from histamines, because actually heat causes histamine release as well, and vasodilation on its own. Blood vessels are wide open. All of our blood is dropping down. So when we see that redness in our legs, it's actually blood pooling in our legs. And then your heart and your brain, you get dizzy because your brain's like, I need blood flow up here. Where the dysfunction of the nervous system comes in is that your brain isn't telling your heart to pump blood back up. So it's not appropriately understanding that the blood is dropping, and it's missing that signal, basically. So then by the time it realizes, your heart starts pounding really fast because it's like, oh my God, get me blood up here, please. I need blood up here and in my brain. So that is the dysfunction of the autonomic nervous system. Remembering that our nervous system controls, where do I send blood? What muscles do I send to pump? What do I make happen here? How do I make this happen? So if you have any delay in that or any dysfunction, you're not going to get the blood flow to the right places. And that creates horrific symptoms. By the way, feeling really dizzy and then having your heart pounding really fast is freaking scary. And that's the really frustrating thing about MCAS and POTS. They both syndromes mimic emergency room needs, right? So you're like, oh, your heart's pounding out your chest, your blood pressure's insanely high or insanely low. You feel like you can't see, you have a fever, you have rashes all over your body. These are all ER reasons. So the way that we help POTS and MCAS is you work on the nervous system. Easier said than done. But for symptoms with POTS, what a lot of people do is I call it, you kind of make your body like a Go-Gurt tube. So if you imagine like those old school Go-Gurts, I don't know, you're both very young, but you know what Go-Gurt is? Like those like tubes of yogurt. You squeeze the Go-Gurt tube, right? You get nice blood pressure on either end. Blood would pump because it would be like filled up basically. So we have people wear compression socks. We have people wear abdominal binders. And when you squeeze the body, it pushes the blood up basically. That's like one treatment of POTS that we see. And then also the treatment a lot of times for POTS is eating a lot of sodium and salt. Build the blood volume. All the goal is to build that blood volume, often with hypovolemic POTS, one type. Again, very long explanation.
No, that was perfect. I feel like in the 10 years post-secondary that I've had, I've never had anyone explain that to me. And I feel like such a moron because people come in and they're like, oh, I had POTS. Like post-COVID, I was diagnosed with POTS. And I'm like, okay. Any other problems I can help you with?
It's really well, and then once you hear, but the problem is we have to go step, and if you miss a step, it's like what do you mean this virus causes weird dysautonomia? It's really hard, and it's not later. I will tell you, I've never ever seen a POTS patient who doesn't have MCAS. By the way, which is really rare because most doctors are not treating. They're treating POTS as a neurological condition or a cardiology condition. They're not treating it as a immune condition, perhaps. So I think that the vasodilation part of the MCAS is so important for POTS and why people with long COVID got all these syndromes at the same time. Basically, that's the missing piece, I think, that a lot of practitioners need to hear when you're working with POTS is you have to look at the histamines too. But it's really normal for you to not feel like, what do I do in this situation? It took me a long time to figure out what was even going on in my own body, let alone clients. It's really, it's new and novel science. And when you asked before, Jeanette, like what's with the rise in these conditions? Is it more of an awareness? No, it's a rise because of COVID. It's a tremendous jump because of COVID. Yeah.
I think what must be so scary too, and we see this with chronic illness all the time, but in a situation like this where you do feel like this is emergency, like I'll die if I don't get help,
Mhm.
you might
Mhm.
also feel pretty dismissed
Mm-hmm.
when it's like,
Yes.
no, it's not actually a heart problem. And you're like, what do you mean? Like, I feel like I'm dying. Right. So I
100%.
feel like
Yeah.
the mental part of that too is so, so difficult.
So back in the day, functional naturopathic medicine was the last stop on the train. So
Yeah.
how did we all advertise on our websites? Have you been to every
Yeah,
conventional medicine doctor and
exactly.
conventional medicine failed you? Now you come to functional naturopathic medicine. The crazy part, Vic, is now I'm seeing people who have been to every functional medicine doctor and every naturopathic medicine doctor, and they feel worse.
Yeah.
Because actually you do a really kind thing, which is you say like, I really don't know how to help you with this. And like lovingly, like I will help you with the symptoms in
Yeah.
whatever way we can.
Yep.
But most people don't. And what they end up doing is they put people on these mold protocols. They put people on parasite.
Yeah.
They kind of treat in that old school functional medicine. We
Yeah.
got to do the
Mm.
SIBO. We got to do,
Mm-hmm.
like
Yeah.
leaky gut, like, and
Yep.
which like wasn't, these are real. They're really very real physiological conditions. But if you have an immune system that's on fire and going crazy and feels unsafe, and then you
Yeah.
try to torch it with a detox, you're going to get a
Mm-hmm.
lot more
Yeah.
symptoms. So now people are coming to me with injuries from functional
Right.
medicine where I'm like, I actually wish they were just in a conventional medicine doctor's office at this point, which
Yeah.
it's hard for me. I'm a functional dietitian. I love functional naturopathic medicine. I think it
Yeah.
is still the answer, but like I really do. And I have the most faith in Eastern medicine. Like I have the most faith ever, but we have to practice it in a way where we are like so walking it back
Absolutely.
and not just treating
Yeah.
the second people walk in the
Mm-hmm.
door.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think that's something that's so important as a doctor is to be able to just refer and to admit that you don't
Don't
know.
know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah,
Right.
this was, I used to say like you don't have to be have to have had a condition in order to treat it. I've just it's either you have to have extensive training with these or you have to have experienced it or both
Yeah.
because I am again, I'm like tough as nails and I was
Mhm.
like, ooh, I don't know if I'm going to make it through this was how bad it was.
Wow.
And like a lot of clients are bedbound because of it. Like it's, a lot of clients can't leave the house because their immune responses are so strong. Like these are you can get probably the most drastic symptoms like of any sets of conditions or syndromes, unfortunately. Yeah,
Mhm. Totally.
totally. Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about hypermobility.
Yeah, absolutely. So Ehlers-Danlos syndrome is a collection of connective tissue disorders. Mast cells live in our connective tissue. What a coincidence, okay,
Mhm.
that they live there. So if you have any weirdness, I'll call it, going on with your connective tissue, and connective tissue is a layer of tissue that's in our joints, blood vessels, bones, and surrounding every organ in our body. So very important. So people who have so I have hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is the only one that actually they don't have specific genetic markers for yet, but we'll get them. But hypermobility, which is basically when your joints extend past the appropriate range of motion, can indicate a connective tissue disorder. And if you have a connective tissue disorder and you can't have structural support for your body, or your nerves get continuously irritated because you don't have that structural support, that's where the POTS comes into play, and
Right.
the dysautonomia and dysfunction as well. But people independently with hypermobility, you don't have to have all three of these together. I just see it all the time
Yeah.
with all of them together, and
Okay.
having one issue can make the other worse because if you have constant chronic inflammation, that's going to affect your connective tissue. Your connective tissue being altered will bring on more inflammation.
Yeah.
Body works in congruence with the rest of our body. There's no joint, there's no piece of our body that works in isolation.
Mm-hmm.
Every
Right.
single part of our body communicates at all times.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. I want to talk about root causes. So obviously, you know that in
Yeah.
naturopathic medicine and functional medicine in general, like root cause is the big thing, right?
Mhm.
So I was thinking, like going into this episode, COVID would have been a root cause, but I'm
I think
wrong
it
there,
is.
right? Okay.
No, I think
Okay.
it is.
It doesn't just
So
activate it.
yeah, so it is a root cause.
Okay.
It's funny using root cause. I would use like bucket theory for
Okay.
this, basically. So here's the really annoying part about MCAS. It's annoying. I do find it annoying, and I'm saying it's annoying. You can almost never treat the root causes at first.
Yeah.
So if, let's say, so it's kind of like this bucket, right? It could be environmental issues, it could be nutrient deficiencies, it can be detox issues, it can be genetic factors, it can be infections, it can be mold in your environment, it can be any of those classic things that we know cause immune dysfunction or metabolic issues, like anything like that.
Mhm.
But the issue is that, let's say, parasites can create a huge histamine issue, a huge constant immune activation as your body tries to fight them, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Mold, cytokine storm, SIRS, like not even a question. However, if you try to fight those things directly, but your immune system gets there first, you'll never be able to get past the front door because your symptoms are going to be so bad, basically. And then you're going to
Right.
recirculate those toxins, and
Mhm.
your body's going to mount a new response on those toxins, and there's a higher immune response. So the deal is that there are many root causes for MCAS. Long COVID's one of them. Anything environmental, even being in the heat too long, can fill your histamine bucket, so to speak.
Right.
Stressful events, exercise can cause that. I have a lot of clients who are like, why did I have full body hives after a workout and I feel so fatigued for weeks after? Like, I'm sick after working out. What is that about?
Yeah.
I did an IV with 15 grams of vitamin C in it because I thought it's going to help me kill the COVID. That's going to help with the long COVID. That triggered me I actually called Dr. Kochko and I was like, am I supposed to feel violently ill from this? And he was like, no. He was like, you're not. He's like, you're maybe a little fatigued from the IV, but that's what started really hinting me off, basically. Because again, if the histamines are an issue, you have to deal with the histamines and the nervous system first. So there are many root causes, but the answer is, does it help us knowing the root cause in the beginning? Not really.
Yeah.
Later on, it helps
Yeah.
us, and you will be able to get in there, so to speak. But first, you have to calm the fire of the body down.
Absolutely. Before we move into more kind of details on this, can we talk about histamine itself a little bit, just so
Yeah,
people
absolutely.
know what's going on when we mention that? Like, what are the common symptoms that you see in clients with histamine issues? How do you know it's a histamine problem?
Yeah. So I want to tell you, as a part of the answer, I had a client who came to me and she was on 8 psychiatric medications for insomnia, and
Gosh.
none of them worked. So she was sleeping like 2 hours one night, 5 hours one night, 1 hour, and it was like 21 days of close to like no sleep more than an hour. Like, that was uninterrupted. And it was like trazodone, Ambien, Xanax, like really heavy hitting medications. Nothing was touching it. And I had like, honestly, it was like a spiritual download because this was like 4 or 5 years ago. This was before we knew anything about long COVID. It was just starting to happen. And I said, I think maybe this is like a histamine issue. I had seen like 2 weeks before this long COVID study, and I think this is what sparked it in me. And it was a long COVID study that showed that there was 16 people with long COVID, and insomnia was one of their symptoms, and amongst others. And they gave them Pepcid, like the which I don't know if it's the same in Canada. Is it called
Yeah.
Pepcid and
Yeah.
famotidine?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because I know you guys have Reactin versus Allegra or the
Mhm.
H1s.
Yeah.
And I saw 14 out of 16 of the people had an 80% reduction in symptoms from taking Pepcid. And I was like, why would Pepcid work with long COVID? I couldn't even understand it. I was like, Pepcid's an acid blocking drug. Did they have acid reflux? And I looked through the symptoms. None of them had acid reflux. And I was like, what is the deal with that? And that's because Pepcid is also an antihistamine. And I only learned that after. So I had my client, and I think it works really well for anxiety and insomnia for people because it works on the vagus nerve since it's working in the gut. And I gave Pepcid. I said to the client, just take Pepcid. Let's see what happens. And she has not, in 4.5 years, had a sleep problem since. She slept through the night every single night since we initiated that protocol. So, and not on any medications for sleep at all. Like, it literally was, I was like, Pepcid? Of all freaking things, Pepcid.
Yeah.
So just to say, insomnia is one of those nasty symptoms that can come from histamine issues because histamine acts as a neurotransmitter, and its goal is to keep you awake and alert and on. We hear about cortisol as being that. Histamine is that a lot as well. So histamine is very arising, very arousing. So anything like anxiety, insomnia, anything where you're really up, zingy, that feeling of like ants crawling under your skin. Classic histamine issues that we think of are, of course, like seasonal allergy type symptoms, and allergy type symptoms too, like rashes, eczema, skin conditions, as well as like seasonal, sniffles, sneezing, coughing, things like that, mucus. Very common with histamines is feeling like there's digestive issues, a lot of acid reflux, because the parietal cells of your gut have receptors for histamine and they have a symbiotic relationship. So more acid reflux with histamine issues. Diarrhea is very common with histamine issues, as well as bloating. I see a lot of. Can cause constipation, but a little bit less likely. Again, a lot of these, you're thinking of the body in that heightened state and that state of trying to get things out of the body. And that's where you get that hyperactivity, you get that gut movement, that gut motility and everything like that as it tries to keep things moving. A lot of dizziness, migraine, symptoms. A lot of people have like visual disturbances from histamine issues as well. And then again, we're talking about fevers. We're talking about anything that can affect your autonomic nervous system as well can come from histamine issues. Frequent urination's really common. And I would say like just that feeling of like almost being hungover, but it's all the time. And it's people who are like, I don't know, I just feel unwell all the time. I get that a lot. So it can range from emergency style symptoms to I feel really off a lot. And it can happen, unfortunately, in any organ system in your body.
I was telling Vic before this that I'm convinced that I have some sort of like histamine issue. I always like, and it's gotten really bad in the past 6 months, but heat, working out, always a rash, like insanely itchy where like I have to put down the weights and I have to like scratch. And like going to heated classes, I can't do it anymore because like it's too much. And even just going to regular workout classes, like if I get too hot, I have to like stop and like scratch myself. Like it's actually insane. And like all of these other things that you're talking about, I'm like, okay, maybe I need to go to the drugstore and get some Pepsid.
Yeah, just try a little pep. Just try a little Reactin or a little Pepsid before we. Yeah. So if you're having heat intolerance like that or exercise intolerance, I'm usually pointing people towards the histamine direction. Okay. That is, I can't, we're certainly not diagnosing anything, but yes, those are very classic exercise intolerance and heat intolerance because of the vasodilation piece. And because unfortunately what happens with histamines is like the more histamines you release, the more your body makes, which is a really backwards way the body works. I'm like, don't do that. Like release less if you have enough. Another thing that's very important to mention is that those with histamine issues generally react to foods that are very healthy. So I'll know someone has a histamine issue if they're working out more and they feel worse, if they're eating healthier and they feel worse. And that's because a lot of the foods that are naturally high in histamines or cause our body to release histamines are really healthy. Citrus fruits, right? So you tell people start drinking lemon water for your digestion, right? And then they start getting violently ill and you're like, what's going on? Fermented foods, right? How many freaking years did you guys learn about gut health and fermented foods, right? And even like thinking about like soy products, like miso, like fermented soy products, miso, natto, tremendously healthy foods, right? Vinegar, spinach, avocados, tomatoes, bananas. I mean, these are like objectively the healthiest foods that exist. So when people start going on diets and they go from diets or diet changes and they go from eating like a hamburger on bread to then eating like a salad, then they get really sick because there's those foods in them. And they start eating salads that have vinegar and lemon and the salad dressings. So that's usually a hint to me is like, I started being so much healthier and I felt so much sicker. That's usually what clicks me off.
I not to have like a consultation with you right now, but I was eating tempeh. And I remember this one day, like I had some tempeh for breakfast or whatever, and I was out for the rest of the day because I had so much pain in my stomach. Like I actually thought I had a stomach ulcer. Like it was like not good. And now I'm like, well, I can't have tempeh, I guess. So there's all of these
things. And there probably wasn't even anything spicy in it or anything like that. It's generally, histamines can cause extremely painful stomach cramping as well.
So we'll be going to the drugstore after this episode.
100%. Just a little Reactin, you know and we can talk about the stigmas of antihistamine medications as well.
Yes.
Because I'm a functional dietitian. Do you think it was my dream to be like, let's go to the drugstore together and get Pepsid with my clients? Like it's not why you got naturopathic medicine degrees. It's not why I got a dietitian degree. But if the histamine issues are so rampant, And it's the difference between, I have clients who can eat a tomato and end up in the hospital. If
Yeah.
it's the difference in the
Right.
short term, or even sometimes long term, of being on those medications to reduce symptoms enough to have some level of quality of life, or so you can start working at the root causes,
Yeah.
it's usually well worth it.
Mm-hmm.
Little bit different when I'm talking about a reactant or a Pepsid versus like a Benadryl. Like,
Mhm.
there are studies that show that Benadryl can be very damaging to the brain, even in like shorter term
Right.
doses. So I definitely would say there's a different
Mhm.
class. But the second generation H1 medications, if you're in the States, like Zyrtec, Claritin, Allegra, if you're in
Yeah.
Canada,
Mhm.
Reactin, are much safer. And there's really no studies that show that those have pronounced cognitive issues. And then my question is always to those practitioners online, because I see every day like antihistamines are so dangerous. I'm like,
Yeah.
what's the danger of letting histamines run rampant and inflammatory in your body?
Right.
Yes.
We have to do a benefit risk like analysis
And
here. We
and
have
Mhm.
to.
quality of life too, right? You're talking about
Oh my
people,
gosh.
like, can't get out of bed. Like, what? We're not gonna talk about
Literally
that
can't get out of
or
bed, have lost their jobs. There was one study that showed, I forget where it's out of, and I feel so guilty for it. I'll send you guys the link so you can
Mhm.
have it. That showed that the quality of life with those with long COVID was worse than those with stage 4 cancer. Now, I'm not saying the
Oh.
prognosis was worse, and I'm not demeaning the experience with anyone with stage 4 cancer,
Yeah.
but the quality of life is so low because the fatigue is so pronounced, and also because people are so gaslit about it that they have no doctors to go to.
Right.
You know where to go when you have stage 4
Right.
cancer, and people are like, you know what, you're on chemo, you have cancer. I understand why you feel crappy. If you
Mhm.
just literally cannot get out of bed, or your heart goes crazy when you stand up, people are like, this is a hypochondriac situation. I mean, these are
Yeah.
the most histamine issues evade medical care
Yep.
so badly, because you want to go to the cardiologist for the heart thing, but your heart is working perfectly.
Mhm.
You know, where do you go if you
Mhm.
feel like you're peeing too much? You're not going to go to an immunologist.
Yeah.
That's not. It's like the symptoms don't match up with who you would see, and there's very few practitioners who treat this. In 2020, they did a study on the prevalence in North America of MCAS, and the prevalence of the population was 17%. So after COVID, the numbers have to be way higher than that. I mean, it's not even a question. So I think it could be up to 30% of the population has some
Wow.
sort of histamine issue,
Oh my
because that's what
goodness.
the study showed for long COVID. And I think if you have long COVID, you have a histamine issue.
Right.
Yeah, definitely. As we're talking, I'm remembering she wasn't a patient, but
Yeah.
when you say like, "Oh, I'm a dietitian" or "I'm a naturopath,"
Yeah.
people are like, "Can I tell you my story?"
Of
So
course.
yeah,
Yeah.
so she told me her story about dealing with long COVID, and she had mentioned that she never had like really any health issues in the past that she could note, and then she said with COVID, it was like never well since, and she's like trying to explain to her husband that she can't cut peppers for dinner tonight is like the
She can't
worst.
stand on her feet for
She
long
can't
enough,
stand.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
she said
It's
like
horrible.
you feel like a hypochondriac, you feel like Munchausen's disease, like that sort of
Yeah.
thing, right? You start to get really in your head about it, and it's so
Yeah.
sickening
It
for
is.
these people. You talked
And
earlier about a concept of highly sensitive bodies. I want to get into that because I've
yeah.
heard like highly sensitive people. I've heard in the context of like fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome. And so I
Yes.
want to know
Yes.
like, yeah, can we kind of
Yeah.
dive into that?
So HSP is the highly sensitive person is trademarked by Dr. Elaine Aron. That's a different thing,
Okay.
and it's also relevant, but
Yeah.
that is completely owned by Dr. Elaine
Okay.
Aron, by the way. So what I have kind of coined with the help of a friend, Organic Olivia, but not trademarked, is the highly sensitive body. So this is a person whose body acts in a very particular way, and I would describe it as a person whose body just behaves kind of like the opposite of everyone else's bodies, right? Like me and Jeanette, we're going to work out. We go to a Pilates class. We're like violently ill for 4 days after. Like, what the
Oh
heck?
no.
I'm having a gorgeous salad. I put a little bit, a teaspoon of vinegar on the thing. I can't work for 3 days. Like, this is like not how people's bodies generally react. But I've kind of seen that there's patterns of reactions that I clump into this person who lives in a highly sensitive body. Now, even before COVID, I always was a person who lived in a highly sensitive body.
Yeah.
I describe it as like the person who would hate going to the beach. I'm like a hyper social person. I can't be in the open, wide space with the heat on me and the sand. Like, it's not going to work. I'm not going to feel awesome in that environment. Like,
Mhm.
I know my limits as a person too.
Mhm.
Like, it's like if I'm speaking, like if we're doing public speaking, I could talk for 15 hours straight.
Yeah.
But if I'm like doing something, I don't know, like it's not even active, but if I'm like emotionally laboring in some way, like if I was talking to someone at a party and like taking on all their problems for 30 minutes, I'm like, I'm going to be sick for a month. Like it really depends. Like it's very different with clients because I actually get very energized from clients, but
Yeah.
it's just, I know that my body is not going to act in the same way. And what I've found is after working with thousands and thousands of clients and in this information center I called the Highly Sensitive Body Hub, I see that everyone's bodies are just there's a kind of a roadmap for these people's bodies, and it's very predictable, which is really relaxing to know, because I think there's something very rare about these syndromes and conditions, because learning about them instantly helps you. Now, if you learned about leaky gut, it wouldn't help you immediately, right? You wouldn't be like, but if you know when you're in that feeling of like there's something so horrifically wrong with me, and then your brain would normally be like, oh my God, this is so bad. That creates the whole thing happening over and over again. So just knowing like, okay, Jeanette, I keep using you as an example, but like, all right, I went to work out. I feel really weird after. This is like a histamine response. Let me cool my body down. Let me drink some nettle leaf tea. Let me put some let me take a reactant. Like it lets you know where to go, and also just understanding your body. And in these highly sensitive bodies, I almost feel like the game is chess, not checkers, and you need to learn to play chess basically and learn your own body. And when you do, it's like the ultimate relief. So these are the only set of conditions that knowing about them really helps, because it would not be the same again with other non-nervous system based conditions. It would not be the same with cancer. Not learning about what cancer is doesn't immediately help you when your nervous system is so involved, because the nervous system and the immune system interface with each other. And this is a constant nervous system activation. It's like, oh my God, my body can calm down because I know what the heck is happening here.
Yeah. As you're talking, it reminds me a lot about like disorders of gut brain interaction. So like IBS and like functional bowel disorders. We've had like a couple of people on that have talked about those before, but like that is similar, where it's like people think are having these real issues, like they're having a lot of pain, but you go to a doctor like, oh, you just have IBS, like it's all just in your head. And it's not, but it is in a weird way. And like once you realize that your nervous system does play a big role, it can, help you tremendously. So it reminds me a lot of like a lot of gut things as well.
Yeah, it is. And the gut is also a lot of gut issues can be root causes for MCAS too. But the nervous system, I think we see a lot online that's like, you have to put ice on your neck and head and that will help your vagus nerve. For me, it's about like, the nervous system is about just finding ways to feel safe in your life, whatever ways make you feel safe. So if in the beginning you're having these reactions, these symptoms, and it's like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening, which is normal, like super, super normal. I can't believe my heart's at 160 beats per minute right now. Like I have to do something about this. If we can find that other voice in us that's like, all right, this kind of sucks, but it always passes.
Yeah.
If we can find that voice, it's a completely transformed experience medically. Now, that's really hard. So there's a lot of also what are called like limbic system retraining programs for COVID, chronic fatigue syndrome, MCAS. And that's like Primal Trust, the Gupta program, DNRS are some really good examples. But these are all, it's really funny because it's MCAS and it's chronic fatigue. And we think of these being maybe immune symptom conditions, but these are nervous system based conditions as well. So the answer is it's a specific type of like meditation that really targets like the cells, I would say. Like it's really, really specific. For IBS, I was thinking about this, like, have you guys heard of the Nerva app?
Oh yeah.
Big fans.
I hope you have, exactly. But that works with visceral hypersensitivity, which is not actually, like, we know there's no real like gut dysfunction. It's that you are experiencing the visceral hypersensitivity of it. So that's what is happening in a lot of these syndromes, is that yes, it stinks that your nervous system is so involved, because that's what makes it happen for so long, is that constant thing. And it is also your responsibility to deal with it, which is really, really unfair. Like I wish there was like one medication. I wish there was one thing, but the only thing I know for sure is that if you find safety and you find a way to manage your reaction to those symptoms, you will get better. That's like, that I know for sure. I would say in 100% of cases, the number one thing that I see in the people who heal is that they change their mind at some point, but it's freaking hard. It's the hardest thing you could ever do in the world.
And even for like practitioners and doctors too, right? Like it's a lot easier to just throw like a parasite protocol or like a whatever detox
Love
at
to.
someone versus like
Yeah.
talking through all these things, getting them to meditate or to do all these other like nervous system retraining things. It's a lot harder and it requires a lot more time and patience to do all of this. So I think that's
Yep.
part of it too, for sure.
And it's like, how do you tell a body that's in a full blown horrific symptomatic episode to chill out?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like really, really hard. It is so much easier said than done. I feel silly even saying that to people, but if I didn't experience these extreme symptoms myself, and I always tell this story when I'm talking about my journey. So part of this whole thing on my hypermobility end of my journey was I had a chiropractic injury. I'm going to say this also, if anyone is going to a chiropractor, if they have not done a hypermobility assessment, do not let them touch your neck. Never let, and please don't anyone, chiropractors should not be touching people's necks unless they're like specifically craniosacral trained. Like so dangerous. There's so many nerves here. We know the vagus nerve runs through your neck. So I had a chiropractic injury where I went to the office. They didn't know I was hypermobile because they didn't do an assessment, which is a 3-minute freaking assessment that every single chiropractor should do. And they took this like scalpel thing. I forget what it's called, and we're like digging into my neck and they're like, your neck is so tight. Well, they subluxated like the joints in my neck, basically. So I walked out. My head was like this. I couldn't hold my head up. And I crawled to the ER on cement floors. I crawled to the ER because my heart rate was going crazy because the vagus nerve controls your heart
Oh
rate.
my gosh.
So the nerves were so irritated and there was such an interfacing between the mast cells, the connective tissue, and the nerves that my brain couldn't tell my head. I had no support in the connective tissue to hold my head up. So all the nerves were irritated in my neck. And I couldn't walk for weeks and weeks and weeks. I was literally in a neck brace for a year. I was in a back brace for a year and I was seeing clients. There's some podcasts you can see I'm wearing my neck brace still, which is pretty funny, but I would prop myself. I couldn't hold my body up. So this was like 3 or 4 years ago, but I would prop myself up against the wall during client sessions and I was wearing a neck brace and I'm like, I love you guys. You got to take me like this because I can't stand up. Like, I'm just telling you. And people were like, I'd rather have you like this than not at all. So I'm like, all right, I'd love to be entertained. Like, I'd love to help, so it's fine. I don't want to sit but I remember I used to have to lift this, actually the computer chair I would use. I would have to lift myself up on a computer chair and wheel myself to the bathroom because anytime I would stand on my feet, heart rate would go crazy because the blood would just drop down immediately. And I was standing in the mirror of my bathroom and I literally remember looking in the mirror and I was like, Michelle, I just don't think you're going to make it out of this one. And then I heard another animalistic part of myself. It was like, you're never going to say that again. Don't ever say that again. That is the problem with these syndromes and conditions is that everything will tell you, look at me. I'm in a neck brace. I'm up all night with violent tremors. I'm sick, rushing to the bathroom. I was sick in every cell of my body. So what in my brain should believe that I'm ever going to be better, right? And then it becomes, none of them are progressive conditions, even including hypermobility. They're not progressive in nature, but they become progressive as we keep letting our nervous system tell us that we're going to stay sick, which is the correct thing that our brain's telling us, trying to protect us. But we have to fight against it for our lives, unfortunately, when we're in these states.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you for telling that story because I think that's also an important thing for people to think about, for sure.
Yeah.
I know when people are probably listening, they're probably, maybe some people are thinking, you know what, I have some of these symptoms or this seems like something that might be something I want to explore further. How can someone distinguish between like histamine intolerance, MCAS, or just sensitive to certain foods or just sensitive to the environment, just allergies, like, because they can look similar, right?
Yeah. I don't know if it matters if we distinguish between histamine intolerance and MCAS for one distinguishing feature. So histamine intolerance is that your body may have an issue processing histamines or it's intolerant to the histamines that are there already. So you may have a normal amount, but your body doesn't like them. The distinguishing feature between histamine intolerance and MCAS is that MCAS will involve other chemical mediators because then the whole mast cell is being activated. So you have to watch out maybe for the other cytokines, prostaglandins, like the other mediators and inflammatory issues. I don't know that histamine, as we learn more information, that I don't know if histamine intolerance is its own thing.
Right.
I don't know. I have to tell you, this is just my speculation. I don't know because it is in that you could have a normal amount of histamines, but your body doesn't like it. But that could happen in MCAS too. So I don't know if distinguishing it is really important. If you have allergies, you have histamine issues though. It's part of an allergic response in ways of like seasonal allergies. Food allergies are mediated by a completely different process though. Like either IgE, mediated. They're a completely different leg of the immune system. But if you are only sensitive to those high histamine foods, I would say, yeah, it might be a histamine problem.
Okay.
It's notoriously extremely challenging to get diagnosed with histamine intolerance and
Yeah.
MCAS. The way that MCAS is diagnosed is in an immunologist's office, and they would run tests either by testing your blood to see like, oh, how much histamine's floating around in your blood, or your urine, and to see like, oh, are there interleukins, tryptases, like those other mediators, basically, what excess amounts are floating around. The problem is if you're not in a flare, if you're already on antihistamines, histamines don't live in your blood. So it would just, you'd have to catch it
When you're in a
at some
flare or
point.
something.
The best way we know to diagnose MCAS is actually through biopsy, because you can see the activity of the mast cells. So you can biopsy, like if someone's ever getting an endoscopy or colonoscopy, I'm like, tell them to grab a little piece out and see if they can biopsy for MCAS. They can also do like a skin biopsy, but it's like uncomfortable, obviously, to take like a piece of your skin, obviously. But those are the kind of gold standards, because you can actually see mast cell activation in biopsies.
Okay, good to know.
Wow. Yeah, that's fascinating. I want to talk about food. Obviously, we talk about
Yes.
food a lot in our careers.
Of course.
And so
Yeah.
I think it's important because Jeanette and I do a lot of similar to how you do with like the anti-diet kind of
Yeah.
with weight loss. Jeanette and I talk a lot about like the dangers of certain elimination diets.
Elimination diets. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so
Absolutely.
I want to have this conversation because there's like these two worlds here where it's like, okay, but maybe we do need to eliminate high histamine foods for a period of time. And how do we kind of approach that? So I'd like to, first of all, what are like the top foods that
Yeah.
we should maybe experiment with reducing or eliminating while we're dealing
Yeah.
with this? And then we'll get into the whole elimination conversation.
Yeah, I'm profoundly against long-term elimination diets as well. It's
Yeah.
been a huge, especially if it's creating more fear than it's helping. This is one of the exceptions, like you said, where you may have to do a low histamine diet for a bit of time, because if you're eating a tomato and going to the hospital, it's worth it to not eat tomatoes for a bit. So the highest histamine foods are citrus fruits, fermented foods of all kinds that could be cured meat, any food that's been fermented, like those healthy gut foods like kimchi, vinegars of all kinds, bananas, spinach, tomatoes, avocados come to mind as being like the highest histamine foods. So there's a lot, but those are the ones I would start with. And then foods that have been left over for a long time, and alcohol also is very high in histamine, especially wine. Wine's probably the highest histamine food. And everyone knows that, because like even people not in highly sensitive bodies get flushing with wine and things like that too.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So when it comes to navigating how we're going to structure the elimination of these foods, because I know that I think Jeanette and I have both experienced this, where we've done, of course, some form of elimination diet, and to this day I'm scared of certain foods because there's a lot of food fear that can happen.
It can create a lot of food fear, especially if you do eat a banana and you're violently ill for 3 days. It makes you not want to eat a banana again, for sure, right? I would say you would want, so everyone reacts to different levels, maybe starting with like the really heavy hitters, like tomato, citrus, vinegar would be like the top heavy hitters that I would start with, and see if you can make alterations or swap them out for other things. The good news is none of those foods are eliminating real nutritive value in ways of macronutrients or minerals. So you can eliminate vinegar and it not be, it's taste wise, it's really annoying, but it is, it like really, lemon and vinegar, it's like, it's hard, especially with restaurants. It's one of the hardest elimination diets you can do, but generally, once the body releases histamines, those histamines live in your body for 3 months. So you need to do an elimination diet for probably a couple months to notice a difference, while you're also treating, histamines through medication, supplements, lifestyle, everything like that at the same time. I don't react to, like, unfortunately there's one high histamine food I can't eat. Chocolate's really high in histamines, but that I can eat. Yeah, I know. I forgot about that one. But I can't eat pickles still. And I'm like a Jewish person from New York, and pickles is like our like food. Like it's a big thing. Like pickled vegetables are huge. But I don't react to chocolate anymore. I don't react to all those foods. So it really depends on the person. But if you're in just like a huge histamine storm all the time and you're sick 24 hours a day, I would say like take those heavy hitters out for a bit. And again, the good news is they're not, they're not scary if you don't have histamine issues, obviously. They're very healthy, and you'll probably be able to reintroduce them again.
Yeah.
Additionally, you can take an enzyme supplement called a DAO supplement, DAO, diamine oxidase supplement.
Mhm.
Diamine oxidase, right? Am I having a
Sounds
moment?
right.
Wait, this is my brain. Hold on.
Diamine
Let me
oxidase. Yeah,
dig
yeah.
in. Yeah, diamine. It was so weird. I was just seeing it spelled differently in my head. And I'm like a person who sees words as I'm saying them. And I'm like, did I just? Yeah. So that is an enzyme in the gut that primarily helps to break down
Okay.
histamines. So you can take that with a meal and it'll help you break down histamines. If you know you have a birthday party or
Hmm.
something where you're like, I have to eat out at this restaurant, anything like that. So I would say, without driving ourselves crazy, start with those foods and then have a conversation with yourself around the relationship with food piece where you're like, listen, this is not unsafe as a food. It's just that
Yeah.
my body randomly thinks it is right now, and make it like silly with yourself. Like
Yeah.
you're like, for whatever reason, bananas are signaling extreme danger in my body. This will change, but it's just temporary and just right now. Bananas aren't scary. None of these foods are scary,
Yeah.
but they do, when the body is playing chess, they are going to be received wrong. So you're like, my body's still
Mhm.
playing chess for right now. I'm just switching this. It's
I like
temporary.
that.
Always it's temporary. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's so important when we consider that it's a nervous system related concern,
Yes.
right? And
Yes.
now we're creating this stress on the nervous system when we are getting rid of food. So it's so important that we change that perspective ourselves.
100%.
Definitely
Yeah.
crucial. When it comes to the reintroduction phase, so we've waited 3
Mhm.
months without these high histamine foods.
And it doesn't have to
Are
be
we
perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would go with the foods that you want to eat the most and
Okay.
that you think will have the smallest reaction to.
Okay.
Okay.
I never really reacted to lemon. So it just depends on the person.
Mhm.
And does it have to be a perfect 3 months? No, but if it's before, yeah, it's not like that perfect of a science,
Mhm.
but if you're not on antihistamines especially, yes, you're going to notice those reactions. Usually it takes the reintroduction for people to not be mad at me that I ever said we might want to limit these foods now, because then they feel better for a while and then we forget that those foods are making us sick and then we eat them and we're like, oh my gosh, that's how I used to feel every day. That's so
Right.
weird,
Mhm.
Again, it's not that these foods are unhealthy, and it's not that each one of them is as impactful for each person. It doesn't matter what's highest in histamine. It matters what that person personally reacts to. Honestly, it really depends. I can't. It's so weird. I don't have an answer scientifically for why that is, but
Yeah.
different people react to different things.
Yeah, it's interesting. Even like, not that I'm diagnosing myself with any of this, but even just going through my own like,
I feel like we got an HSB. We don't have to diagnose with I just make sure one. Okay, that I'm running late. Okay, we don't have to diagnose anything, but you can say you're an HSB
yeah,
girly.
I will
That you
say,
can say.
I will say that.
Exactly. Yeah.
But I know, like for me, like when you were talking about the foods like spinach and tomatoes and all those things don't seem to like play an issue with me, but the fermented foods for sure. So yeah, it's just interesting, and
And the
it's like
tempeh.
you don't have to eliminate all of these things, but
No,
I think the way that you talked about it is very important for people to understand.
especially because the more high histamine foods you eat, the more your body releases histamines. Like, listen, I wish that wasn't
Yeah,
real. Again, I wish we didn't have to do that. It's not a preference of mine. I don't enjoy elimination diets from a psychological perspective, but from a physiological
yeah.
perspective, yeah, a lot of times people have to eliminate some high histamine foods for this
For
short term.
sure. So I want
Yeah.
to talk about supplements because I'm sure people are wondering about that as well. What are your
Yeah.
favorite ways, maybe not including food, to regulate mast cells in the nervous system? Because we did talk about the pharmaceutical options. Do you ever use supplements? Do you think that there's maybe a time and place for supplements or pharmaceuticals? Does it depend
Yes.
on the severity? Would love for you to talk about that because I'm sure listeners are wondering about what supplements to go
Yeah.
buy.
We use a tremendous amount of supplements for histamine issues, but they're very
Yeah.
specific to help either break down histamines, prevent inflammation, prevent excessive release of histamines, or they help with the nervous system at
Okay.
first. We will eventually get to the root causes for everyone and we go into more detox, but any of like the nervous system supplements that feel individual and supportive, like I love
Mhm.
passion flower,
Mhm.
glycine, neurocom, GABA, L-theanine. I really hate ashwagandha and rhodiola, by the way. I find that both of them are so anxiety
Okay.
inducing for
Rhodiola
people in
is
highly
for
sensitive
me.
Yeah.
bodies. Yeah, I actually find it for everyone, but I'm not like allowed to say that. But
Yeah.
ashwagandha is an herb that's supposed to like give energy, as you know. So I always find it makes clients very anxious, and I
Yeah.
never understood why it's like in a because it's like adrenal supportive. Anyway, I never find those to be supportive, but anything that brings the system down. And then when it comes to histamine support, there's a lot of anti-inflammatory and mast cell supportive supplements like PEA, perilla extract, quercetin sometimes hits, sometimes doesn't. Vitamin C, usually not until a later stage because it's also histamine inducing. Unfortunately, a root cause of histamine and detox issues can be B vitamins, but B vitamins cause horrendous histamine issues. So anything that pushes detox in the body is going to push a histamine issue because any change, any stressor, anything, even if it's a good thing, can cause a histamine issue. So while you need those things to address the root causes, you just have to use supplements in the beginning that calm the body down, calm inflammation down, and calm the histamine response down.
Amazing. Okay. To end off our episode, we do something here called rapid fire.
I love it.
And we're going to give you 7-ish statements that we've seen online in the online space, and we're going to myth bust. So it might be true, it might be false. What we need you to do is just say myth, truth, or it depends.
Oh, I love it. Okay. Do I explain, or I'm just saying myth, truth, or it depends?
Totally. You can do whatever you'd like.
Wow. I'll see how I feel. I see how I feel.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. And some of these we did address in the episode, but we're going to drive those points home. So if you react to everything you eat, it must be a histamine intolerance.
It depends.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. It depends.
Estrogen can influence histamine-related concerns.
Oh, we didn't get to do estrogen and we didn't get to do migraines. Yes, histamine, truth. Histamine and estrogen have a direct relationship based on their receptors, on estrogen receptors. So most people with histamine issues do not feel sick during PMS. They feel sick during ovulation and before ovulation. So that's a dead ringer for me. Someone says, Michelle, and I remember when I used to type into Reddit for answers, I was like, why feel dizzy day 9 period? I was like, and like, what is it? What am I going to say to a doctor? I feel dizzy day 9. Like, what are they going to say? Like, that means nothing, So, but it was very predictable, which is why also high level thing. Yeah. Have to know your body. So I'm just, as a homework assignment for anyone listening, track your cycle, track your symptoms, notice how you feel. I have my clients, like, even before you go to a healthcare professional, before you're even seeing Jeanette or Vic, like, start Dr. Titus and Vic, I need your last name, in a second, doctors. But make a stick figure of your body and write next to the different parts of your body. Okay, during the head, I'm going to write headaches, anxiety. Yeah. Know your symptoms and know when and why they happen, because you give a roadmap to a practitioner then. Because Vic, if you had that POTS client come to you and that POTS client said, every time I shower, this is happening, you would have felt differently, even not knowing about the condition, because you actually need to treat the symptoms first with these conditions anyway. So know your symptoms. Yes, there's a direct relationship between estrogen and histamine, and it's why we feel weird during weird parts of our cycle. Truth.
Cool. That's so, I actually heard someone call it like their ovulation flu. They feel like they get the flu every time they're ovulating.
Yes.
Now I'm like, oh my
Absolutely.
gosh. Wow.
Yes.
Interesting. Okay. You should cut out all high histamine foods permanently if you have histamine issues.
No. Myth.
Yeah. No. Alcohol can worsen your histamine symptoms.
Truth. Big fat truth, unfortunately. Yeah. Inflammatory and high in histamine is really tough.
Yeah.
Really aged also. Alcohol is very aged. Right. The more a food ages, the more food is a leftover, the higher the histamine. It's like it's acidic. It hits on every single histamine level. Yep. Yep.
Long COVID is basically just chronic fatigue syndrome.
No. Myth. Because it's usually basically a combination of MCAS, POTS, chronic fatigue syndrome, and hypermobility, but it's not just usually chronic fatigue syndrome. There's probably a lot more going on as well, even though chronic fatigue syndrome is profound in its own way too. Yeah.
Okay, the last one, people with POTS, MCAS, and or histamine issues usually also have anxiety.
It depends, but probably. Yeah. It's not that, it's just the state of histamines being in your body can cause a histamine issue. For myself, I worked so hard on my panic disorder where I never have mental anxiety ever anymore. I just know what to do with anxiety. I have a roadmap for it. I know exactly what to do. Yeah. But I have physiological anxiety where I'm like, oh wow, that there's a lot going on in that body. But anxiety to me is a reaction to the physical sensation of anxiety. So I noticed with histamine issues, this like new type of anxiety that was so in my body. Yes, usually it does manifest as that. And then if you don't get the actual zinginess. You sure as heck are going to get an anxiety symptom when you end up in the ER with your heart rate going crazy. So, the actual symptoms are so scary that they usually cause anxiety. Yes, it's very, very common.
I would love to get to the point where I don't have any mental anxiety.
Yeah, what's that like?
It was like a 15-year thing, but I think there is like really ways to do that. I think of anxiety as a messenger from the body, and like I just know how to answer the call now, but it doesn't mean that I don't get the symptoms and sensations. It's just that I don't respond to the call in the same way, but it takes like insane practice.
For
like
sure.
so yeah.
For sure.
But I believe it's possible, honestly. I really do believe that's possible.
Love it.
I experience it.
Love
yeah.
it. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. This was an incredible episode. I learned so much. I feel like I'm ready to write my board exams. Like I'm ready to
That's ready to write her board exams, and she's also ready to go get Reactin and see
immediately
what happens. Exactly.
No, honestly, I'm going to the store right after this episode.
I always get clients in Canada, and I would feel so safe with them seeing you guys. So I always get client requests from Toronto. So I would feel so safe. There's a really amazing Dr. Maile Devlin. Do you know her? She's in Maille. She's in Toronto too. Sorry if you need to edit this. She's amazing though, and she's a friend. She has a podcast too, and is an ND in Toronto.
What's the podcast? Do you know?
Let me see what her podcast. I think I was on it 5 years ago, which is so cool that like we've been doing this for so long. Let me see. Devlin. Let me see the name of her podcast. I'm sorry, you have to edit this now.
No, that's okay.
The Well Conversation. It's it's either Maile Devlin and Dr. Christine Chung.
Oh,
okay. I'm sorry that I made you just edit that now.
No. Don't worry.
The Well because they stopped in 2021. It was literally 4 years ago. It's so funny. They are so cool though, and I've referred a lot of people to them. Okay. So you guys should be like ND friends.
Cool. Awesome. We'll have to connect with them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much again.